Hello, this is Pam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air for the first time with Jeneen Robinson, actress, casting director, and director. And I wanted to thank you for joining us on the Pam Electric Ghost podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, one of the things that we wanted to talk about is like you actually have a independent film festival um, award-winning series called I'm 13 Yo, right? Is
Yeah,
that what
I
we
don't have a
wanted
film
to I
festival,
think we
but I
wanted
have
to
an
talk about.
award from the film festival. Yes.
Yeah,
For
yes.
Best Woman
Award winning from
Filmmaker
that.
from right. Best Woman Filmmaker for my series I'm 13 Yo. Yes.
Okay. And so is this Instagram the best way for people to connect with you, or did you have a better link than that?
No, you got it. Hey, you got me way more than what I could probably think of at this point. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about that, winning that award in that series and how that made you feel, because you've been involved in the industry. You had been working with, shows like My Crazy Ex, Cry Wolf, and, you'd been, in theater, the Hip-Hop Wizzard of Oz. You've been in that. Um, and, so maybe you wanna talk about getting into filmmaking and doing your own series. Maybe talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess the journey was a bit interesting because I was more into theater in terms of writing and acting for a very, very long time. Um, and that was my space. I enjoyed it. And while I was living in Washington, D.C., I did a few commercials here and there, but theater really was my lane. And, I did it as a child, and I just really enjoyed the live performance and the live stage. But coming to Los Angeles, pushing and aspiring to be, a better actress and to do this full time, that was my goal. It's just inundated in LA in terms of actors. The market is saturated, suffice to
Mm.
say. So I sought to write and create my own works. I'd always been a writer, stage writer, and so you know, God sent me several people to just kind of encourage me and motivate me and say, hey, all this stuff you're putting on stage, just, put it on film. And I'm like, "Ugh." I'm a very meticulous person. So I'm like, it didn't really resonate with me at first because I thought it is just not that easy. Like you don't just, put things on film. There's a method and a madness and all that. So I had to learn to write as a screenwriter, not as a
Mhm.
theater writer.
Yeah.
And I had to learn a lot around the set, behind the scenes, and ultimately we came out with I'm 13 Yo. So it just blew me away that that was my first project. It just completely blew my mind that I would win Best Woman Filmmaker for that. you know because it really was like the first major production that I put together, so I was
Was it
overwhelmed with surprise and joy, very grateful for it, honestly.
how much training did you have to do to get to be a filmmaker? Because like you were an actor, and then you were doing plays, and then you go behind the scenes and you're directing and you're filmmaking and the camera work. Did you actually get under the wing of anybody else, or did you kind of just have an idea and you just wanted to execute and say, well, I don't know what I don't know. I'm just going to try from my perspective. Did he kind of go like an Orson Welles? Is a famous statement where he said, like when he did his great film, Citizen Kane, he said, I didn't know what I couldn't do. So I just did whatever I thought I could do. I thought my eyes
Mhm.
would, if the camera would be like my eyes. And he did some really revolutionary things because he didn't know the proper way. He didn't go to film school. So he just did it the way he felt it should be done. So did you come
Right,
at it
right,
that kind of
right.
perspective?
So, in a way, in a way I did, and I don't want to say it in a way that to make it sound easy, or like you're gonna have that Orson Welles luck,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of preparation still that goes into it. So I did not go to film school. It's probably one of my regrets in life. But I chose to hire people who had gone to film school.
Okay, so you had people with you.
Right. So, but to be honest, it's expensive either way. So, in hindsight,
Mm.
I should have just taken that money and gone to film school. But I'm a very dedicated and disciplined, self-taught person. If there's something I want to know, I'm going to read, research.
Mhm.
I will do the work, and so I definitely did a lot of that. And so I definitely don't want to say it in such a way it makes it sound easy, because there are a lot of people who do just launch out into the deep and say, hey, I'm going to film something. And then you know, I'm just being honest, like they come into
Yeah.
me and they're like, hey, can you attach yourself to this project? Can you act in it? Can you do it? And I'm like, no, because, the production quality is not there.
Mhm.
And so I can't really attach my name to something. And they're like, well, I'm just trying to get it out there quick. And it shows, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. With the
So,
preparation. Well,
right.
that's I'm wondering, like, the storyboarding or the film angles or the camera angles. I guess, like you said, you brought in people who had that training, and then you know what you want. Like, so visually,
Right.
if you're like, you're the type of person, like, if you're a singer-songwriter, we know what we want. If I don't hire somebody else to do it, and I'm doing all
Mhm,
the production, even the recording
mhm,
engineering, because I know what I
mhm.
want. And I can
Right.
kinda get to where I wanna be, and I can do the whole thing. Kinda like the way
Right.
like a Prince would do it, right? He did
Right.
everything, like,
Right.
he had the vision, he could bring
Right.
people in, but you still have the overall vision of, like, I know it when I see it, I know what I want, and then is that the kinda
Absolutely.
technique that because 'cause you're
Absolutely.
kinda owning it?
Yeah. And I was explaining to someone else how, you still want to be able to speak the language. And so that's what I had to learn, because people, even though you have the vision, like, that's not really what I want, as a
Mhm.
director and as a leader in general in any industry, you still need to be able to communicate how to get there. Because sometimes people really, they don't know. And so
Yeah, yeah.
that's why I chose to take 2 years. I mean, I'm 13-year-old could have come out in 2015, or 2016. It didn't come out till, a couple of years later, because I still devoted myself to learning the craft and learning, how can I get this director? How can I get this DP or this lighting person or the sound person to understand what I want? Because some of these people
Oh,
are real tech geeks and,
so they
like
wanna
tech
hear the
wonks.
acronym.
Right. And
Yeah, they want
to
they
say,
wanna
hey,
hear
I want
yeah,
it. Right. To say, hey, I want it to be bright means nothing to them. But it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I need a 24 lens, to do this. Let me shoot in, this many 24 frames per second, because that's what I need for comedy. So you
Exactly.
still really, if it's your money and your time, which to me, money and time are completely equal, you're going to invest the time and to educate yourself so that you can communicate exactly what you want, and the end result is what you want, what you envision.
That makes sense because you wanna know, like, the type of cameras and the angles and the lighting lingo. Like, I'm a
Talk
software guy,
about
so we're full of
camera.
acronyms.
That was my first test. What kind of camera do you want to shoot with?
Yeah.
Because that's got to match your budget. And at first,
Well,
people were like, "Well, I got this camera, I got that camera," and I'm like, and they'll tell you, "But I have the best. I have the red." Time out. To me, a red is for adventure movies and drama features. It's not for comedy, in my
mhm.
opinion. But again, everybody's a different
Yeah, yeah.
artist. So if you're shooting something, so in some people's minds it works. It doesn't. It just didn't work. I knew exactly what kind of camera I wanted to shoot with. It's a whole language, and you have to learn it. So I took the time to educate myself, even though I didn't go to film school, but it took a couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah, and you had the look, like, you knew that you didn't need a cinematic film quality camera for doing, like, comedy, sitcom, or
Exactly.
situational show that, like, you look at, like, a Seinfeld or something, you look at, like, a classic show, like, Good Times,
Right.
or so it's just are they really using, like, the kinda camera they use in Star Wars? Like, probably not, because they don't need
No,
that,
right.
because that's not what
Exactly.
you're trying to do.
And it gets so you really get into the minutia of it all, which is probably why I won Best Woman Filmmaker, because I'm like, I get into the
The
split
details.
hair details. But sometimes yeah, you're filming, and you want to come out with this amazing product. Like, okay, you're communicating to the team, because I pull my creative team together. I don't like people to just show up and get ready to work. No, we need to capture the
Yeah,
vision
for
first, and everybody to me works together. So you need to talk to them before we show up. But
Mhm.
anyway, yeah. So my thing was, I want a modern family style comedy, or and some of my, I love Seinfeld. I'm glad you mentioned it. But some of my writing style is in that
Yeah.
vein, or Blackish even, maybe. But the
Mhm.
problem with that is, when you're talking to a crew, uh, and trust me, a lot of people are willing to show up and run with it if you're paying them. But
Uh-huh.
the difference in those, and you're going to know what I'm talking about, the difference is in studio or on location or out. I don't have a sound stage. So I
Oh,
need
yeah.
people who understand how to show up on location, or show up on a set that's out, and be able to produce what I want, even though we're not in a soundstage, we're not in studio.
It's
And
not as
so
controlled
even
environment.
that, yeah,
Yeah.
like all those comedies that we mentioned, Seinfeld and
Yeah, they're all
Blackish,
controlled, yeah.
all those comedies are in studio.
So there's a lot of control there, right? In terms of,
Oh
like,
my God.
the sound and the lighting, you can get very consistent. If you go out, it's like if I'm a musician, right, and I try to record in a hall versus, like, a studio. If I go
Exactly.
into, like, a sound, like an auditorium,
Exactly.
and then I gotta get
Exactly.
the sound guy to adjust all
Exactly.
the preamps and adjust all the soundboards so that
Exactly.
we don't get
Exactly.
echo, we don't get this, and we don't get that. And so that
Right.
must make a lot of work from the lighting and the
Yeah.
miking, like,
Yeah.
because you're dealing with ambient sound or outside sounds or
Right.
white noise coming in or different things. So how do you handle that? You
Exactly.
gotta have a really good sound person that probably you had to check had they had experience with the type of
Exactly.
filming that you wanted to do, right? So you
Mhm.
did the research to
Mhm.
know, I need a sound person that knows this because I'm not in the studio, or
Exactly.
I need a camera
Exactly.
lighting person that understands that because,
Mhm.
yeah, the same thing in, like, music, like, we get into the details of what your recording engineer, what have they worked on, what has your
And
producer worked on,
and and when you're investing 50, $100,000 in these projects, trust me, you do not want to reshoot. So
No, no, you don't wanna
know,
do that.
I'm not
Studio
I'm
time
not
is
there
studio
yet.
time. Yeah, studio time, and it's expensive. If you
Exactly.
book time, you're like, regardless if you're on set or off set, like, you're still paying the crew, right? You still gotta pay
Mhm.
people their rate,
You
and so
got to
that's
pay
how
people.
being yeah, well,
So
that's
it's
where,
it's
like,
best to get it right
were you,
the
like,
first time.
were you
Yep.
storyboarding it out, or you're more like, more free flow or have a high like, an outline of it, or did you have it really highly planned? 'Cause it sounds like you're very detailed.
Yes. So I'm not a storyboard artist in terms of having a sketch person, that type of I would love to have that specialty on my set. Trust me, I can see the need for it. um but for our budget, we didn't accommodate that. But what I did do, um my process is a little different. But what I did do in terms of my casting, I would put um I still ask for physical headshots. I mean, it's a little
Mhm.
antiquated, but there's a method to my madness, because I would just put them all on, my wall, and just look at them every day for a few days,
Sounds
and
like
just see,
whiteboard.
like, are these the choices? Right. And it's like storyboarding. Exactly.
You
Are
kinda
these the
whiteboard, yeah.
choices? Are these the
headshots
people
to
that,
figure out
right, are going to look like
which they'll
family
like.
and have chemistry exactly together? And then I put my locations up, you know, and I just put it on a big wall and just, you know, try to visualize, you know, is this going to match? And then once I do my casting, you know, and start, I have to do wardrobe too. Hey, you know, maybe that's why I won Best Woman Filmmaker, right? I'm wearing all the hats.
Oh wow, are you
But
are you highly involved in the wardrobe? I mean, are you
oh
still
yes,
working with designers or clothing people to like
no, no.
get
I
the,
mean,
because
I
you'll have a certain idea of what you want it to look like.
exactly. I took suggestions, but for the most part, I know what wardrobe should fit what characters, and I need to blend. You know, I need to make sure, you know, everybody can't have on prints and stripes, you know, like there's a whole thing. And what colors are you wearing? Because what mood are you trying to convey in the scene? Or and does this fit the whole theme of the show? You know, so yeah, I'm
Yeah.
very, very
And do
involved in
you
wardrobe. Very.
do you try to tailor outfits to the characters of the actors? You know, of your character or the people playing the roles? Do they have, because you know, it's like some classic shows, like the outfits are kind of like iconic with the character. Like they kind of fit the
Mhm.
personality of the character. Are you into that kind of mapping of how the
Yes.
person should be?
Yes. Yes, yes, I am. And I mean, my, you know, I don't want to take all the credit. I did have a couple of wardrobe stylists who assisted me on occasion, um, that I could call on. But you know, they're again, they're a little bit above my pay grade. So if it was like really, really big, important days that I really wanted to make sure you know, I nailed it, then yeah, I would hire them or call in some favors from friends who I knew were deeply in fashion industry. But for the most part, I did, like you said, the mapping of the wardrobe. Yeah, throughout the whole the series. Yeah.
So, in terms of the scripting, are you totally writing the script all yourself, or you're working with multiple writers?
Now I write the script. Now I'm 13 Yo is based on my real life story. You know, it's not a true story, but it's based on my real life story as a single mom of my son. And he's 20 now, but he was 13 at the time. You know, I just remember those days when he turned 13, just asserting his independence. And so I did give him some writing credit for that, because some of those lines truly were the things that he said, you know, especially when the characters say,
Happened to his
I'm
wife.
13, yo, I'm 13, yo. Like he would walk around the house all day, every day saying that. I'm like, oh my God, will you stop? Just make it stop. You know?
So he
So things
contributed
like that.
to your contest.
Yeah, so things like that actually came from my son. So I gave him a little IMDb credit for that, you know. Yeah,
Yeah,
start them
yeah.
off on their path, right?
So that's really interesting to, you know, like us, I love to talk to creative people that have that kind of level of you know, vision. Because like if you think about somebody who's like a singer-songwriter and they wrote the song, then it
Right.
feels like that's their idea, right? It's not
Mhm,
somebody else like Tin Pan Alley wrote it, and then not that's not cool because Frank Sinatra was singing all this stuff. They're like, "Yeah, that's amazing," but
mhm.
there's something about when you have your stamp on it, like you said, it's partially part of your life. Like you put
Yes.
yourself into it, and so that's your
Yes.
vision. And it's like a lot of that. So when you do that, did you feel any trepidation about putting like your like any fear about putting parts of your own like I guess the vulnerability of doing that, like when you're
Oh my
doing that kind
God.
of work,
You're
were you
you're
worried
scared
about that?
shitless, man. You are scared shitless. I remember theater. I mean, you know, film is a little safer. You know, you don't get as much anxiety with film, but well, you do actually. It's probably the same. Yeah, it's probably the same. Anyway, but I remember just doing theater, and every opening night, you're just sitting there like, man, oh God, when they open these curtains, like everything you dream, you know, all because you know, I tell people I hear voices at night in my head, you know, so it's like
Mhm.
they're gonna hear everything you thought, like everything, like and you know, so and everybody's open to judgment and opinions, and it happens. I mean, so even while, you know, and again, I'm 13. It was based on, my life as a single mom and my son turning 13. I was still very, very nervous. And, but I did kind of, it wasn't so narrow in scope. I used to be a teacher. So I kind of knew that age group too, and their antics and how they behave. And so it was well informed, but I still was like, wow, you got to be very vulnerable as a writer.
Yeah.
You have to be very vulnerable as an artist. And so I remember, when we first started, trailing it through film festivals, people, I had other parents, teachers, because you think, are people going to get it? Like, are they going to get it? Or are they going to just be like, what the hell is this? But it just trailed at film festivals. Parents, teachers, people who knew other like kids in that preteen, they were like, man, you nailed it. You nailed the character. Like, so they were really, they found it really refreshing. And it crossed, and this is what amazed me too, that it crossed so many cultures. And so, even though we weren't talking about like bar mitzvah or the Jewish culture or even, other cultures who have these rite of passage, like at that 12, 13-year-old age, like people from so many other cultures were able to resonate from it. And that was really, really exciting to see that they got something out of it. Exactly. Right.
Because sometimes, like, I'm a child of the 70s, and we grew up with, like, Good Times and the Jeffersons and Sanford and Son. It was kind of like very niche black kind of thing. And then we get, Cosby, and you get Blackish, you get things that are more relatable outside of the subculture of what was originally done in TV. And you're wondering, like, well, can you speak to, like, beyond a black audience? Can you actually speak beyond that cultural center? And some people don't want to give black art a chance because they want it's a niche market. I'm not going to get as big an audience. And did you run into people that were like, well, this is like a narrow audience, and they didn't know if they want to fully like buy in?
Yeah. So that, these are closed-minded people who make those decisions because, you find, as a writer, you're, and somebody had to tell me a long time ago, just write, Jeneen, just write. Don't try to think about the marketing of it, how it'll come out, so you have to be free as a writer. But at the end of the day, you really are just telling a human story. It's just a human story that humanity can share. So it does transcend culture and race and, all these limitations that we think, things have to put on our mind. But that's the beauty of a great story. You can watch Reservation Dogs, or, you can watch Grey's Anatomy, or, any great show, if it's beautifully written and the actors are true to their characters, it should transcend time, period, place, race, culture, age, everything. It should. Yeah.
Well, that's the magic about creativity. I love original ideas that come from, the original creators, and sometimes you have these things to where it's not like a singer-songwriter or the film director or screenplay writer is like, a Tarantino type of thing where you're doing the whole thing. Like you're coming up as an independent and you have a vision. And it's the same thing in music. Like you have somebody just like a producer and they produce the same style for 10 other artists. And everybody gets that same stamp versus like somebody comes out of left field and it's like, it is Curtis Mayfield and he has his own thing. That's his thing. And that's the style. It's very unique. And I was always drawn to the people who are willing to kind of push it and have that vision. And when you write, do you feel like you're in a flow state? I've talked to a lot of authors and creative people that get into this kind of, or do you like to really map it out and chart it out and pre-plan it, or do you allow dialogue to kind of come from like this kind of free flow stream of consciousness, or do you have a very strong idea of what it should be?
So it happens always. It could be, from the skeleton or the outline to the full development of the story. Or, sometimes I just get scenes and scenarios like your muse is just talking to you, but you don't know where it's going to be. You don't know what medium it's going to end up in. Like, I have a bunch of stuff that I have no idea. Is it stage? Is it screen? Is it, I don't even know anything about, what the title of it will be, or anything. It's just sitting there waiting to, attach itself to something. But yeah, it happens in all kinds of ways. I remember just, working like your boring 9 to 5s where you don't belong. And just sitting there sketching out scenarios. So when I first started writing, it wasn't to, write a whole thing. I was just imagining, characters and dialogue. That really is how it started. But now, as I researched and read about screenwriting, now, sometimes now all I get is like the log line or the title and the essence or the theme of the movie. And then I'll go back and map out characters and do my character breakdowns and, start to, anyway, a lot of stories nowadays, in modern filmography are character driven. So it's important to take that time to just sit down. So now I find myself, now that I'm a more developed screenwriter and filmmaker, now I find myself saying, meeting people in an Uber like, that's an interesting character.
I did.
You used to start with all the plot points, like the events and the sequence. But yeah, now it's everything, it's like you want that character.
I did, as a songwriter, I did Uber for like 5 years, and I kept a journal of all the characters I ran into, and then I kind of used it for my songwriting to come up with ideas of.
See,
because it's a kind of a way, it's a trick. It's not a trick, but it's a way to kind of. Well, the way I look at it is like I never know where something's going to come from. So it's like you can have the thing where you wrote on the napkin, you did the voice memo, you woke up in a dream. I'm in my home studio, so I can just jump on my piano 2 in the morning.
Right.
I had a dream of the chord progression, and I jump on it and I put it down because I don't know. Like one day it's on the grid, one day it's in my head, one time I'll hum it in the woods, put it into a voice memo. It's like, well, however it comes, it's like they say, however it serves the art, however it comes to you, like you're open. I think a lot of creative people, what I found is like we're kind of vessels and we're open to that muse. And we have a capability of kind of not discarding it. You don't discard I mean, there's a story about Hendrix with the Isley Brothers that one time he was recording a track with them and he went off and did something. And they asked him, like, what are you doing? He said, well, the universe gave me this. I had to put it down. And they were like, well, you're fired. But he was the kind of guy, like, if it's coming to me, I'm going to put it down. And I'm not going to ignore it, but it's like, that's how it is,
Yeah. In the church, they say you don't quench the spirit, right? So, you have to, I would encourage everybody, write it down. People are always telling me, I have an idea about a book. Write it down, write it, but I can't. But you know what? Once you start putting 2 words on a page, because sometimes I sit down, I'm like, I'm going to write at least 1 page tonight. I'm going to write at least 1 page. And, I look up and before I know it, I got 10 pages of dialogue written, so you just have to get in the habit. And I'm not an AI. People are, musing about AI. It's great. And all you got to do is tell it. I would never dare trust my writing to AI. No way.
I'm not.
I'm not gonna. That's just too much to me. I'm like, no way. And you'll stifle your own spirit. Like you said, the universe is trying to pull something out of you. You're not gonna get satisfied by using AI. I promise you. You've got to get out of your soul
what I found is there's a lot of people, like even in music, like sampling is kind of like AI, right? When sampling came along initially, people would just, take what worked because it worked. So you could take, you take a Bowie song and Queen song, and that's popular. That was the number 1. So if I take that same beat and I put something else on it, it's probably guaranteed to hit the top 10. But that's is that really you?
Exactly.
So the whole idea is like, if you want to shortcut it and jump, by doing something like that. There are people that want to do that. But to me, as an authentic voice, that's like
Right.
an honest, authentic, creator that has a vision. I want to see that vision. I like Rod Serling, like we talked about. You get, like his vision in science
Right.
fiction. He did all this. Gene Roddenberry that gave us like the Star Trek. Lucas, all these people, they had these visions, and people were like, "Ah, that's weird." Like, but then it became like the standard bearer because
exactly.
They were pushing it, and
right.
like, why not?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I love that you're into music and stuff. There's so many alliances, artistry wise. Anyway, it's just creativity. But I've been getting more and more into music, and I'm like, I really, because I write. I mean, when I was very young, I started out just writing songs and poems, and it wasn't until I was probably a teenager that I was writing like scripts and dialogue, that type of stuff. But yeah, yeah, it's just, when you're creative. But anyway, it's just really heavy on me. I have a couple of songs I've written, but now I'm like, I'm getting frustrated waiting for people to score. So I'm like, I need to learn how to play the piano. You just can't wait for
people. You don't even have to play piano. Yeah, you don't even have to. I mean, for the non-musician, there's so many tools, right? They have like devices that are not set up as instruments, right? They're not like pianos, they're not guitars. Like things like the Type MPC. They're just like these big things with all these pads, and you can kind of go and just pad out a melody, right? And use these pads to kind of. It's not like a piano, so you can use the pad to kind of go through a scale. And then once you figure out, this is A, this is this note, and then you can use the pads to tap out a drum rhythm. You can use the pads to grab a sample. You can grab like a drum machine, like an 808, which is famous, and then use that to build your beat, and then start putting these things down in these digital audio workstations or standalone systems. And that's where a lot of hip hop, rap, EDM artists, you notice they're not using pianos and things. I mean, I do.
Yeah.
But I also use these kind of non-traditional tools, because then you can come up with things very stream of consciousness and then start throwing things together very quickly. And I like doing that better than grabbing some AI thing and then asking it to, find me something like this with a prompt and give me like this with a prompt. It's like, why don't I just play it?
Right, exactly, right. Okay. That's good to know. Okay, my son is always talking about the 808s and all that. I mean, he's into that music, hip hop business.
But it's just interesting, the creative process that you found yourself driven, to be one of these people that wanted to create something. So maybe you can talk about, like, you felt that at what age did you feel like you wanted to write your own material in any form, like poetry, or do you remember what age you were when you decided that you would do that?
I mean, it was happening very early. I would say by about 6 years old. I was writing, I would journal every night. I was religiously journaling in my diary and my journal. But yeah, it was happening very, very early for me. So about 6 years old, I was writing, and I just kept doing it religiously.
You didn't feel well, some people feel like when I've run into people, they get these limiting beliefs, right? And they feel like, well, I can't do that because I'm not Hemingway. I can't do that because I'm not Paul Laurence Dunbar. I can't do it, right? So like some people, like they don't feel that. They just go right into it, kind of with that child mind. When you're 6, you don't know a limitation, so you'll do it. But then so what happens is sometimes by the time you get 18, somebody tells you, well, you can't do that. You got to go get a real job. You can't do art because that's not real. So then you start to push it down. And then what you find with the creative people is they love it so much they don't stop until it just starts infectious, and then it's the law of attraction, and people just come to you because you believe what you're doing. And if you believe it, then other people start to believe it, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I will say, I will say just, yeah, you can't allow yourself or your art to be judged by others necessarily. I mean, there is a certain level of critique, you know, if you, in terms, if you want to be better accepted by the larger body of whatever industry you're in. But I started writing at 6, you know, writing poems and songs and stuff like that. But I think, you know, as you, because, you know, by high school I was submitting to writing contests, and I was dismayed and really hurt that I wasn't winning any of them.
Mhm.
Isn't that bad? Like, I was like, I'm not winning.
Yeah, but you kept on going, right? You kept on going. You didn't
Well,
stop, right?
yeah, you know, so it, you know, it just wasn't, you know, that wasn't my contest. That's all it was. But it didn't mean anything else other than that. It wasn't my contest. And
Mm.
uh you know, you have to just keep going and growing in life. And so I speak French fluently. So I went in college to Martinique, and I was taking a class
Oh, wow.
there. Yeah, and that was my study abroad. I was taking a class there, and so we had to write, you know, like this 10-page paper. By then, it was like, you know, everything in French was my major, so I had to write everything in French, you know. And you know, so that adds
Mhm.
another, you know, you can't just be a writer, you got to write now in French all these pages, you know, and express yourself like, and be, you know,
Yeah,
like
I
you,
love
like you're native or like believable, right? It's all got to make sense. You can't
yeah.
say the dog is
Culture.
talking to
You
the
have to match
class,
the
right?
culture. Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, so can you imagine now, I'm, you know, I'm in college, so now it's, you know, fast forward all these years later and all these writing contests that I've lost, you know, and these weren't screenwriting contests, they were like essays and stuff, you know, that type of stuff. Anyway, regardless, I was putting myself out there as a writer. But it wasn't until college, like, you know, maybe junior or senior year of college, I'm in Martinique, and here's this class, you know, and the classes were with other French students, right?
Mm.
And she's reviewing. They're very open there about, you know, critiquing your papers. Those professors don't play, right? Like, and in front of the class, she was like, and Jeneen's paper, she said, my God, was, and that was the first validation of my writing I got. She said it was brilliant. She said it was, she said it
Oh,
just blew my mind. Yeah. And I'm sitting there like, whoa. Not only
yeah. How
that
did
I
it make you
write
feel?
something now that resonated with somebody, but she's going, you know, I wrote it in a different language, and now she's saying that it was actually brilliant. And, you know, I wish, you know, I don't know if your audiences speak French, but the expression of that, say, I said brillant, like, and so it just
Wow.
adds a little bit more. Look, I'm a little bit more brilliant in
Yeah,
French than English, right?
yeah. No, but that's very significant because I think that kind of validation is when you're an
Yes,
artist, when you start to get the validation and like why you keep on, you know, not that you say, well, I'm going to keep on going regardless, but when people
right.
acknowledge your work, regardless, like that
Mhm.
is important.
Yes.
When you're
At
like,
some,
because that's where
yes,
usually, you know, and it doesn't always have to be who people think it is. Like when you get that acknowledgement, you know,
and you
that's
get
how
that
people,
validation. And
yeah,
trust me, my parents, nobody was validating my work. You know,
yeah,
you know, so we didn't have the parents. You probably know
yeah.
what I'm talking about. We didn't have the parents that the parents are today. Like these parents today are
What are you
cheerleaders,
doing?
coaches. They're your biggest fan. You know, they could be your only fan, and it matters, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody cared what I was doing in the country, like writing. They didn't know what the heck I was doing. They didn't care. Like there was no validation anywhere.
Yeah, that happens to a
Yeah.
lot
So
of
when you
artists, you
finally
know,
get
I'm
it,
like,
you're
"What are you
like
doing?"
sopping it up like a biscuit. Like, man, I got somebody sees me.
So when you wanted to get into film, and I guess I'm gonna ask this kind of questions is, were there filmmakers that you were inspired by that you kinda, I guess were used them and not as a template, but it's just like influences, like, so you have influence, like, and I always talk about why I love Stevie Wonder. So Curtis Mayfield,
Mhm.
Miles Davis, Prince, that's I'm not trying to copy them. I'm inspired by them. I try,
Mhm.
you know, feel what the that vibe of that creativity and trying to get anywhere near it, is what I'm trying to do. But
So, yeah,
yeah, when
no, honestly, I had no icons, no, idols in this industry whatsoever. And that's not to say there wasn't work that I like. I loved work. This is the reason why I had no idols or people to look up to in this industry. I never thought I was a filmmaker.
oh,
I
so you
never
weren't thinking that way.
I was not, it was not even on my radar. Okay. I'm a writer, yes, and I'm an actress. But it wasn't until but the other part of it, I'm a spiritualist, right? So I'm sitting in a restaurant and literally God sent an angel, this guy to me and said, you're a writer and you need to put your stuff on screen. You need to be a screenwriter. And I'm like,
Oh, so that's it. That's the big
so that's kind of how it happened. Okay. So it completely is one of those things just kind of fell out of the sky, miraculous, and so I thought, wow, this guy does not even know my name, much less the fact that I'm a writer. Like, and I wasn't sitting there with a book. I wasn't writing, like I wasn't like I literally was having breakfast and he comes and tells me this just out of the blue. And I thought, wow. So
oh,
at that point, I was like, well,
that's
can I
very
get your number? Because I'm like, how do you get this? And he said, well, God deals with me this way. And sometimes, I speak like these prophetic words over people. And I'm like, okay, but really, like, there must be a way that, and he was like, no. And so I said, okay, well, I tell you what, I said, since God put it in your heart and mind, then I'm going to draw on that. I have some things I want you to read and you let me know. Now, if you can read it and tell me, yes,
you can
this
see
is
it.
good, then I'll go for it. And he said, well, and he was like, okay, I'll do that, but I'll do better than that for you. I will score. And this is a Grammy award winning producer now. He scores for the game. He's won awards. Anyway,
Wow.
yeah, exactly. Again, I didn't ask for this, right? God will put you where you need to be, right? But he said, I will score your film.
Oh, wow.
He said, I believe that much in the fact that I know God sent me to you to tell you this. I will score it and I won't charge you anything. I mean, you can't pass up a deal like that, right?
No, I like that kind of synchronicity. How does that happen? But I mean, that's
Exactly.
like when you have a kind of free spirit or willingness to listen to the muse, and it's a lot of what
That,
I said. Like
right.
when something comes to you,
Yeah.
do you say no? Like I got into
Right.
podcasting because a guy in 2016 said, "I want to interview you," and then I
Oh,
said, "Well, what's a podcast?" And I didn't even know what it was. And like people were saying, "Well, that's taken away from the band." And I said, "Well, I'm going to try it because like,
right.
why not?" And then we liked each other so much, we started doing a podcast together for 6 months. And that is because I
Wow.
wasn't willing to say no. I stuck
Right.
it out. Sometimes things just come to you, and
Exactly.
you gotta have
You have to say yes.
the
Mm-hmm.
willingness to say yes. And like you did,
Exactly.
that's the kind of thing that happens. I mean,
Exactly.
you fall
Yep.
into something and it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
something I was planning
Mm-hmm.
on doing at all,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm. Yep.
happens.
Yeah. So that was Dwayne DeRock, and he scored. So when you listen to the theme song from 13 Yo, he scored that song. Yeah. Yeah. And trust me, he's making
That's
great money
awesome.
from other people. So he didn't
Yeah.
need my little money anyway.
No, that's awesome, and, like, that shows you, like, when you meet people, don't shy away from that connection. Some people are kinda,
Exactly.
timid about connections, and sometimes you have to be
Right.
open, and that's hard for some people. Some people are, like, a very hard they don't like to show their work. They keep it hidden.
Mm-hmm.
They don't tell
Mm-hmm.
people what they wanna do,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like they're not really where they need to be because they're kinda putting a ceiling on themselves. But it looks like in your case, like you were open to it and you
Yeah.
went with it.
Well, it's back, back to that vulnerability, willing to be vulnerable, but yeah, a lot of people's stuff is just, they talk about their dreams and they, I don't know, they're tossed in their nightstand drawer, but they're doing nothing with them. So yeah, I am grateful that I've been able to mobilize and do the things I have done. But you got to put one foot in the front of the other and do it.
Well, it's just awesome, like you said, like what happened with the recognition for I'm 13 Yo is you didn't know if people were gonna feel it, but you put your heart into it. And when you're authentic
Mhm.
and you just do the best job you can, and you're just being true to your own vision, I think that's what resonates. When people know it's not fake, it's not canned, it's not cloned, it's not AI, it's not
Right,
some this,
right.
then they feel that it's real. I think that's what
Hmm.
people forget today because there's so many tools that can create
Right,
something that's very slick, but it has no heart. If it doesn't have a soul,
right,
if it
right.
doesn't have a deeper meaning, it's like, yeah, you can get a million
Hmm.
hits, but what does it mean?
Hmm.
It doesn't
Hmm.
really mean that much.
Well, right, exactly. And that was really when he told me you need to put your stuff on screen. That was kind of the dilemma that I was having. Like, well, which one? I've been writing for years. So I'm like, which
Yeah,
one do I,
that's
like,
another story.
you
How did you
know,
pick?
yeah, God is giving you this opportunity, and you're like, well, gosh, but there's this, and there's this, and there's this. So I think that really was the impetus, or when I started becoming a filmmaker, because that's when I started having to think, you know, what would be the budget for this? How many days can we shoot it in? You know, what's available? What's available on hand? I knew my score was already done with. So that's an in-kind donation. So I don't need to pay for that. What can we
Yeah,
do
yeah.
in what amount of time and for how much and what human resources are at our disposal? What do we have talent wise? What's at our disposal that would be the best thing to make right now, since this guy is telling me, God told me to tell you to put your stuff on film, you know. So, and that's when I grabbed him 13 Yo. I said, you know what?
So that's the
I
first
think that was the
was
first
that the
thing.
first
Well,
idea
you
that came to the top?
so yeah, so one of the things, so it was two things, and I ended up doing both of them actually. But I had been doing a series of puppet shows for children called the Buppets. And so we had already staged all the shows. And so I thought, so around the same time, and again, sometimes you don't really have a clear message from God, right? You just kind of go with, okay, we'll try this and this. So, and we'll see what happens. And so at the
Mhm.
time, uh, the Huntington Beach Cultural Cinema Festival made an appeal for cultural shorts. And I thought, okay, the Huntington Beach Film Festival, and it was kind of like Black History Month around that time. So I
Yeah,
thought,
okay.
okay, this particular episode of The Buppets would be good for that. And then I'm 13 Yo will be something that The Rock can score for me. I didn't want to, I definitely want to tap into his talent and his, credibility, since he's lending it to us, right? So at that point in time, I thought, it probably take 13 days to film. I'm 13 Yo. And so that was a whole thing of, anyway, pulling together a lot. How do you do casting and all that?
Yeah.
But then with the Buppets, I didn't have as many resources. I didn't have as access to as many resources. I had a friend who had an old camera that they didn't use anymore. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to film I'm 13 Yo with that camera. Absolutely not. I'm definitely going to hire a DP with a great camera. So, but anyway, I did it. The Buppets I did in my living room. It only took one day. And to me, it was horrible. The raw footage was horrible. Okay. But again, you're telling me to point and shoot. I'm a writer and an actress.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, you got
I
into
don't know
it.
what we're
Okay.
gonna come out with here, but we'll see,
Yeah,
right?
you gotta try it.
We gonna see. So So anyway, what came out of that was not necessarily the greatest. So I wasn't really trying to pitch that to be streamed online, but I thought, you know what? I think it's good enough to be in the film festival at least. So the Buffets came out. It was like a 4-minute piece, and I'm like, I just want some expose, like even if I don't win, because my family, we were good friends with a writer from Family Guy. And so, I was asking him too, how do I become a screenwriter, and so he was like, enter these contests. So, I have to follow that lead. Somebody gives you a lead, tells you what to do, you got to follow. So I'm like, okay, this is not really my proudest work, but he said enter contest. So let me put this out there. And when I tell you, I was completely shocked because they had over 4,000 submissions around the world. They only chose 10, and mine was one of the 10.
Wow.
I was just like,
well, and this,
oh my God, I'm just trying to keep my name out there as a screen. I'm just trying to get people to see my name, it's like, bam. And then that night, so one of them was my mentor, Lamonia Brown. She was one of the 10. And the other was Kobe Bryant's basketball project. He was one of the 10. And me.
Wow.
Like, right.
You're in that group. Yeah, you didn't have that expectation.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting there like, okay, how did I land on this planet? This is some real crazy shit, right? So then they gave the mayor was there and they said, we have 4 finalists we want to give awards to tonight. I was one of the 4 finalists. Can you believe that? With my little engine that could the Buffets.
Well, sometimes like people don't know how good their work is, because like when you come into it at not being a filmmaker and you're trying to break in, you're just trying to get exposure, like you said, and you put that effort out there, you didn't, maybe realize how original, or maybe it kind of triggered people to say, well, that's really different point of view, or that's a different angle. And when you're in it as the artist, sometimes you don't appreciate how good your own work is. A lot
That's
of times
true.
you don't know, until you put it out there. That's why a lot of people don't put their work out, because they're thinking, oh, it's not it. And then you don't know it's not it until you put it out.
Exactly. So, when I look back on these accomplishments that I've had in the industry, like this is Hollywood, like this is major league. I think back on those little high school contests I entered, like that. I didn't need to win that. That was nothing. This is the real deal here.
Well, you learned a lesson. You didn't. I know a lot of guys are musicians. Like we're 18 playing in, like a bar or something, and trying to act like we were 21, and they all stopped because they didn't get big. And then people who kept on doing it because they loved it.
Yeah.
And then you get opportunities because you love it. Where other people kind of want to like, what's got to happen when I'm 23 or 24, I drop it.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of musicians, it didn't happen for them, so they just dropped it. And the guitarist is sitting there and they don't play it. And I'm like, did you love it? Or were you trying to do something else? Because if you love it, you'll still be playing.
You'll stay with it. Exactly. No matter what. And I tell people that too when I hire actors. I'm like, look, it doesn't matter if you're making a $1, $100, or $100,000 tonight. Give your best performance, because you just never know where it's going to lead. Just give your best performance.
Yeah. Put your effort in, all work. Like my granddad was a coal miner. He said all work is noble. When I go in the coal mine, it's like I did my 100%. And it's like, so when you're doing something, you should do it at the best of your ability while you're doing it. So that's the way I kind of look at it. And it's just that kind of mentality. Like if you just put your heart into it, like if you're phoning it in, people usually know you're phoning it in. They can pick it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, give it your best. And that's how I approach things. I just want to give things my excellence, my all, my best effort, no matter what, But yeah, that's a good word. That's a good word. Your grandfather told you, right? As a coal miner. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just, well, he's self-reliant. He kind of learned a lot. He built his own house, was a farmer, was a mechanic, because he took all those things from that job and took it serious. Learned how to do the plumbing because they had to do plumbing. They learned how to be an electrician because they had to do that. learned how to build
Mm-hmm.
fix machines because they had to fix machines. So didn't he finish like high school and he learned all this stuff and he didn't realize what he couldn't do. He just kept on just doing the wall, figured out how to do
Yeah.
it and just did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that kind of
Well,
mentality is a
yeah.
good mindset to have.
Yeah, I think about people back then. My grandparents were sharecroppers, and when you think about our ancestors and slavery and the things that they've overcome, it's like, okay, you know what? I shouldn't have any limits on my mind because these people overcame so much to build like great institutions, schools, churches. They built their own houses with their hands. They built banks, even though, and a lot of things that Black people built were just demolished, or
Yeah.
Native Americans had were just taken from them by the oppressive culture. But these people still were ingenious and showed this type of ingenuity, and like, I don't have those things, and I can do so much more. That just thinking about those things should
Yeah.
inspire us, to do great things, right?
Yeah, I mean, our culture is very creative. We created most of the musical forms, in terms of acting and, just the
Mm-hmm.
creative capability of African Americans in this country.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at like from
Mm-hmm.
jazz, the bebop, rock and roll, blues, like hip
Mm-hmm.
hop,
Mm-hmm.
rap, like some of the major forms that actually are associated with the United States, it's all African Americans. We created them,
Right.
and and also within other forms of art, we're like very predominant as like creative forces, and not
Right.
necessarily being highly trained, coming from special schools. We just did it
That's
because we just
true.
felt it, and we
That's
and we do
true.
it. And
That's
so a
true.
lot of people, they're like, I don't have to go to Berkeley to do that. I don't have to go to here to do
Yeah.
like you did it because you felt it. Lead belly
Right.
the blues because
Right.
he felt the blues. Robert Johnson, he
Right.
felt the blues. This it,
Right. Right.
Mississippi Delta blues musician. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
trained. They just felt it. They just
Right.
did it.
Exactly. Exactly. And they were
So that's the
great.
way I look at
But
the
I
kids.
will
Like
tell.
you can do it. We
Yeah,
did it.
exactly. Yeah, I
You can do
always encourage people, but there is a whole wave of I don't need to go to college happening right now. Like, I don't need to go to school. So I push back against that because it's like just because you're not enrolled in an institution doesn't mean you're not studying. You have to
Oh no,
study
you should.
to
Yeah,
excel. Yeah, you should
increase your
definitely
grade.
be
You
learning
should
and
read.
educating yourself. I'm forever a student, so there's always stuff to learn, and just learning about any and everything just makes you better. So yeah.
Well, I'm a big like I learned new tech. And I'm a software designer as my day job. I went to
Oh
a
wow.
school. I went to Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine. I'm a big advocate for education, the more the Socratic method, holistic thinking,
Mhm.
but also a big advocate
Mhm.
of taking people that maybe don't think they can do it
Yeah.
and saying like, yeah, you can, you can learn anything. You could learn how to play
Mhm. Mhm.
any instrument. It's never too late. You could, feel something and put it down and become a great poet, became a
Yeah.
great actor. And it's
Yeah.
just the fear of being on that stage, you got to get beyond it, but that's a you. Like, once you get beyond that, then you can actualize to wherever you need to be, and you can
Right.
get to
Exactly.
whatever point you
Exactly.
need to be. You should always try to, make your mind no, you never stop learning. Like, everything we do in
Exactly.
tech, we
Exactly.
learn stuff
Yes.
all the time. It just gets
Yes.
rewritten. We break the rules.
Exactly.
We have to learn the next thing. Whatever we
Exactly.
knew goes away, and then we have to learn the new thing. So
Yes.
we're
Exactly.
constantly being re-educated,
Mhm.
exponentially.
Mhm.
So it's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
but I wanna encourage our audience to check out your Instagram as God is Boss, and that will be
Mhm.
fully clickable. Uh, so people, when you right now, that's just a URL you can look at, but when we publish on all the major platforms, or on every platform you can listen or watch a podcast, you'll be able to click through and go directly to your Instagram. So if anybody wants to connect with
Okay.
you there, they I'm sure that they would, find a way to talk to you through a DM or
Okay.
however they want to.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
But I
And
appreciate you
and
being on
and
the show.
and watch the show. I'm 13 yo, and I have a
Yeah.
new show coming out as well. So check it out.
Oh, that will that be on the Instagram? You'll be pushing that?
I will be in the next 2 months pushing
Will you
our
be
new show.
promoting on your channel?
Yes, I will be promoting that on Instagram,
That's
Goddess
awesome.
Boss, as well as on Facebook, Saponi Star Productions.
Okay, great. And I just want to have people reminded that we were talking about your other project here. I'm trying to bring it up, and it's
Okay.
not let me do it. There we go. 13 Yo. And just to
Yes.
let people know they can go check that out. And
Mhm.
that's something that they should. We've been talking about it a lot on this show, so I want to encourage people to check that out. And follow you wherever they can follow you, and subscribe wherever they
Yeah.
can, and connect with you. And again, it was great having you on the podcast. Will be
Thank
fully
you.
published tomorrow, and we'll give you a
Okay.
landing page for your audience where they can
Okay.
choose to listen or watch anywhere they like podcast. So thank you
Okay.
again for being on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Peace out, everybody.
Have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye.